thing splashed out.
Oh, you capping. Drip, splash, water, drip, splash, splash, drip, water, splash, splash, drip, water.
What's going on, YouTube? I wanted to give you guys the most requested build video you have had thus far. As you know, I play Valby. I have played a ton of her. It's the main character I play. I really only step outside the box if I need to use another character for farming. For starters, I use a materialized phase reactor. The only reason I keep the Thunder Cage equipped is for the weapon class equipped proc. I do eventually want to switch over to a gold devotion one. I just need to farm the right one. Plus this one has skill critical hit damage, skill effect range. It's really nice for the Valby playstyle I go for. Valby does not have that many sets that are what I would consider great, especially the gold sets. Off the top of my head, the only one that would really benefit Valby is the Slayer set, and it only really procs when enemies are towed, and the only tow situation Valby can do is with her laundry launcher, and that tends to be your least used ability, at least from my experience. So not quite sure if it's worth going for the gold Slayer set just for that, when you can just get overall use out of the acrobat set all the time. So go with the acrobat set. The rolls aren't the best just because it is what it is. I normally don't even use a set. This is just like when I'm bossing and I want the most damage possible. Usually I have like all the loot finder type of items. I can have the shard gain, consumables, the module gains, gold gains, stuff like that. I try to maximize that stuff because there is a lot of farming in this game and you want to make maximum use of your time. And that's just how it is. If a game adds loot find, best believe I'm loot finding. The weapon selection, I use the devotion. That's my main source of damage. I am not recommending anyone to use the devotion. This is just how I enjoy playing the game. I like using hand cannons, precise weapons. The Thunder Cage is probably the overall meta gun for many classes, especially Valby, seeing as how she has the lightning resistance on her water. So this is just, you know, hand in hand complementary. One cool thing about the devotion though, I will say, whenever you feed it other devotions, it actually does boost the defense debuff. So if I get this thing maxed out, I'm looking at around minus 30% defense on a weak spot target, which is huge for your party. I think that it makes this pistol extremely valuable. I do want to try the other hand cannon though, the perforator. As far as the modules go, it's pretty straightforward. I stack as much health as possible and as much cooldown reduction, duration, range, all of that. We have crit hit rate, crit hit damage. Now I did make a oopsie last night. I was tired. I should have prestiged this slot, but I accidentally prestiged this one. It's not that big of a deal. I'm gonna prestige again. I just gotta grind out the levels. But you know, I could have had some extra juice in here for now. It's not that big of a deal. Shock Punch goes hand in hand with her water. Don't really use it that much, so it's kind of irrelevant. If you already have a sub attack maxed out, I wouldn't really spend the money to max out another one. I had the sword maxed out from playing another character and I used it on her for a very long time. Supply Moisture, go to red mod in my opinion. You do not get the reduction in mana in your water anymore, but you do get 20% crit chance with abilities as well as firearms. You get 10% skill duration and 2% weapon trigger rate. One thing to keep in mind is it does say while on water, when you're in cleanup, you're on water the entire time. So while you're surfing around, you will have your supply moisture buff the entire time. And obviously you're going to make pools of water and you're just standing in them. Overall, it's a great buff. I would not trade it for anything else unless you're like late game, and I maybe would use the I forget the name of it, but the laundry launcher one that attracts things like the big taunt. It could be useful in like the higher tier waves. Maybe if they come out with another world tier later on, it could be extremely useful. But for now, with the content we have, supply moisture is probably your go-to. Water play, all water play does is get rid of the bullet and leave a big rectangle of water in front of you. In my opinion, that's not that great. Bubble Bullet is extremely strong. You see the burst damage multiplier is X 469.5%. It does even more damage the more times the bubble bounces before it hits a target and actually explodes. I've seen this thing crit upwards of 800k with my current loadout, and I do not have any fusion damage increases, nor would I like recommend to go for them unless you want to like full send a bubble bullet build. Could be a thing. I haven't actually tried it, but I did have some fusion damage before my bubble bullet was hitting extremely hard. The bullet can be against you sometimes though, as it'll bounce in its own direction. As gimmicky as the terrain is for you to walk over, it's just as gimmicky for this bubble to bounce. So sometimes you get stuck on what you feel like is nothing. The bubble has the same issue. Going into what I do have in my build though, I recommend for this playstyle, you're going non-attribute damage, as all 4 of your skills are non-attribute. That's a no-brainer. However, you get to the point where you're fusion and dimension. The outer ones are fusion, the inner ones are dimension. I personally would recommend going dimension because the biggest surface area of water you're creating comes from your cleanup and your plop plop. So we're aiming to amp these as much as possible. And it also is just kind of how you farm. Usually when you're farming on Valby, you're just skating around the whole area, putting water everywhere. You're not as much, I mean, you throw bubble bullets here and there, but your main time is spent surfing around, you know? You can't cast skills while you're in cleanup. So I would recommend to make the most of that time. You know, if you're going to just be surfing around and plopping here and there, I would mainly just max this out. Like I said, there's definitely a lane to go where you like stack fusion damage and go for big bubble bullets. It's already a short cooldown. With my CDR, it's at 5.4 seconds, which is great. The range on all of my skills is about 2x what it is default, a little over it actually with all the range I have. So we are Supply Moisture, Dimension Specialist, Nimble Fingers, Focus on Non-Attribute, also CDR on the end of that. Time Distribution, CDR and Max Health, Increased HP. On this note, Maxed HP is overall the best defensive stat in the game. I usually, depending on what components I have anywhere from 10k to 16k health, and I have never once felt like I have too little defense, too little health, anything like that. If you have maxed HP, you should be fine. The only character that I've played so far that I feel a little squishy on is Sharon. And I mean, she is a very under the radar type of character anyway. She can literally go invisible and not just stop taking damage, right? So it's not that big of a deal with her. But max HP just takes you very, very far. In this game, health drops as a pickup. You don't get shield drops as a pickup. So if you put all these points into some shield, you just have to wait around. You have to not take damage and wait around to get that back. It's not really ideal. I mean, there's even the escort missions in the game where it's draining your shield. And if you're someone that's spec'd fully into shield, this was my nightmare leveling up. Anytime I seen one of these, I was sad because I was shield initially. And anytime you're doing one of those missions, it's draining your shield. You're not regenning shield. Then you get into a fight while you're protecting it. Your shield's instantly gone and you just evaporate. Not a good time. Into the sub attack, like I said, you could use shock punch, whatever you have, it doesn't really matter. Shock just gets complemented by her water. Any target in her water has -20 electric resistance, so it's nice, -20%. We have frontline, skill concentration, skill extension, skill expansion, emergency measures. Emergency measures is actually really, really good. It's one of the rarer ones I found. Honestly, I was trying to get it, but I couldn't get it. I don't know what other people's luck is with it, but it's the only one I found so far. I haven't even found a duplicate of it. When it comes to her abilities, you're mostly just spending your time plopping, surfing around, and you know, maybe right after a cleanup, you throw a bubble bullet out. I do boss with Valby, and it's not the most biggest pumper class or anything like that, but it's possible, and it's fun. You know, you play a character that you invested so much into. Maybe later on when you have another character that you've also invested into, you can play that one with bosses, but don't be kind of meta slaved out into playing a completely different class just for bosses. You just play what you have fun with. I could definitely kill bosses way faster if I played another character, but it's possible, and I've killed all the bosses that I possibly can solo. Some of the bosses force you into, forming a party, and that is what it is. But point being, I've done it all. You could do it all too. Not only that, I play with, not really the optimal weapons. So not only have I done it, I've done it with the precision weapons, and those aren't really going to be your highest damage uptime on bosses. With my loadout, I'm really just a weak point annihilator. On hard bosses, it does not take me many shots at all to peel a weak point off of a boss. And I usually just try to, anytime I have mana, try to keep water everywhere. One, you're buffing bunnies if you have any bunnies with you. Two, it's just continuous tick damage. Three, if any ads spawn, they're just going to melt to all the water you have. So it's nice. I enjoy it. All right, here we are in the training room. Now, the cool thing about Valby that is honestly underrated. Valby, she can stack her individual water sources. When you first look at Valby, you'll see like the water, and you'll be like, okay, let me just cover the room with as much water as I can. Well, these water sources are their own source of damage. And same for your cleanup. You can circle around. If you follow your own tail with the same cleanup, you're not going to be doing extra damage. But when you put another cleanup down, you will be doing extra damage. So each ability that you use is its own unique source of damage, and you should keep that in mind. Another thing about the plop flop range, I mean, you can see how big of a pool it leaves. It might not look that big, but people that are all the way out here will be getting knocked up in the air. And it's a pretty big radius. I play with max FOV, so it might not look as big as it is, but it's pretty big. But let's start hitting some dummies here and see how it goes. I also do have another weapon that I play with sometimes. It is called the Blue Beetle. Now, the cool thing about Blue Beetle is anytime I use a fusion skill, like the laundry launcher or the bubble bullet, I actually get 10% skill crit hit rate. You just use more mana when you're holding this, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I would only recommend to use this when you're doing like a really consistent farm with mana drops. And I actually am going to make a video on my Valby farm. It's probably the best XP farm in the game that I found thus far, and also the best way to get the void fragments, these different consumable void fragments. You see I have a lot of them. Unfortunately, you end up tapping one or two of them a lot if you're farming for something, which is why I only have 1 in 53 here. But the farm gets you all 4, excuse me. All right, let's hit some abilities so you can see the damage. First, we have Bubble Bullet. Now keep in mind, I am not geared for fusion damage. So this tick is just, it is what it is. It's not big, but you did see the impact of the bullet doing 200k. It was over that, and these mobs are level 100, so keep that in mind. It's usually the highest resistance you're going to find on most mobs. Now you can start seeing multiple stack up together, right? And that's just 2 sources. Now the reason I'm spacing this out is because I really want you to see how crazy the ramp up gets with Valby when you start stacking all of the skills you possibly can. So let's hit a bubble bullet, a plop plop, start swimming around. Kinda sucks knocking these guys around, but and as you see, it's just a ton of damage. If Valby has the time to premeditate an AOE spot, I mean, I have done the wave defense missions completely by myself. maxed waves. And what I usually do is stack up all of my abilities in one spot, and when things spawn, they just start melting. So if we stack up 2 different ones, it is a lot of numbers going on. Throw a bubble bullet in there. Oh, plop plop. It's a lot of damage. If you ever want to see these builds in action, I would highly recommend to come to the Twitch channel, because, you know, I stream almost every day. Had a little hiatus recently, but we try to stream every day, and you'll see how I just go about things, how I progress the game. Like I said, I am a free-to-play player, and I'm further than most. I'm not going to say I'm the furthest along, because I know some people are just going hard with the credit card. But it is what it is. I mean, that's the game. It's just a PvE game, so I can't really be mad at what other people do with their money. It's just, I'm having my own fun, they're having theirs. But that is the build video. If you want to see this in action, like I said, check out the stream. I'll also have a video on a Valby farm that I do, and that's going to be the in action video that you can see if you don't want to go to the stream. So I appreciate you guys hanging out. Appreciate you watching. And with that, goodbye.